Before we go into the topic of non-ejaculation, or at least conscious ejaculation, I definitely ejaculate. It's much more about finding the time and how you cultivate the energy and when to ejaculate and your awareness around it. So before I give you my perspective and my answers, it would just be really great if you all take 5 minutes, and I just did my brainstorming here, so I'll share it with you in a moment. But just write down on your piece of paper, what makes you ejaculate? And then under that, what makes men ejaculate? And we'll just go into some short dialogue, and I'll start to explain my answers a little deeper, and then we'll build into I've drafted like a whole online course into non-ejaculation, which is probably 6 months, and somehow we're going to try and condense it into an hour. So it won't be everything, but it'll be definitely useful things that you can practically take away with you. What makes you ejaculate? And what makes men ejaculate? And in this moment, we're presuming that orgasm and ejaculation are the same thing. Later, they become different, so then those answers expand. But right now, it's the orgasm is the ejaculation. And just to help expand our thinking, so you can carry on, but I'm just going to add one question, and it's probably going to help your mind loop back round and expand on the first one. What happens when a man becomes so lustful, he sends unsolicited dick pics? What happens in a man's psychology and his emotional body that makes him pull out his phone, take a picture, and send it to a random person on the internet? What is that that's going on in him? A lot of guys do it, we don't know why. What is it that creates that? What makes a man act inappropriately? What pushes him into rape? What is it? What is that energy that takes us over, that sends unsolicited dick pics, acts inappropriately, has the desire, or makes us actually rape other people? Maybe it's time. If you want to keep writing, you can. But if anybody wants to share their major insights, really feel free before I share mine. Thank you for sharing. I just want to say before we go any further, there's not a right answer. The way we're going to teach and look at this is that your body is a mystery school, and there are no right answers. You make these answers within yourself. Our relationship with ejaculation is primal life force. It's the energy that we create life with. It's called the small death. It's the energy that we kind of die with it in the same way. And from that, it's like a base polarity. So we can create any reality that we like. And our relationship to ejaculation, to orgasm, to what makes us come, it's really a choice. We build our culture, our belief, our mind, our body, our relationship with sexuality. And we're going to start to look at how we use polarity to start to break down some of those fundamental beliefs. Joe clearly has his understanding of his demon inside him, and that's totally true, because that's his experience of life. But it's not really the truth for all of us. We all have different experiences of life, and we're going to start to learn to consciously create, not just from our belief, but with our sex, because there's so much power within our sexuality. And if you want to start reprogramming your mind, how your body works, your relationship with reality, how you interact with universal law, the law of vibration, attraction, using your sexual life force, using your power, is fundamental to shifting and changing your reality. So right now, it's just great to get an idea of people's different worldviews, not that anything's really true, not that there's any real right answers, but it might just be good if we could kind of do like a quick fire play so a few people get to speak, because there's still a lot of material to get through. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to explore our own psychology. So one of the major things we learn when we're working with energy is ascending and descending flows. And if we were learning Kundalini bodywork and Tantra first, we'd start to understand very basically about our chakras, our energy centers. I guess you guys know all of this, so I'm not going to waste too much time, but we have upper energy centers and lower energy centers. And in these lower energy centers, it's around money, security, sexuality, survival instincts. It's where that animal lives. Now, if the vibration and the energy in our lower energy centers is still full of trauma. It's full of pain, it's full of fear. We haven't come to terms with our desires. We still reject our desires to rape, to send dick pics, to be validated. We somehow feel that we're wrong, or we feel shameful for something, that, or we don't trust ourselves, that we might be violent. Then we create a big block here in the energy. Now, as sexuality comes up, the point to make a tantric love with somebody, the energy should rise up through every energy center. It comes to the third eye, and then you unify, and then your consciousness goes to a higher state of awareness. You experience life differently. But when we have fear and trauma and lustful emotions that we suppress, then this energy, when it comes up to here, it doesn't feel safe. It says, if this energy comes out and I have all of this power, then I'm going to strangle you. Then I'm going to rape you. Then I'm going to get violent. So the fear, let me throw all of that energy out. Like somebody said, let me get the poison out of my body, because it's power. It's immense power. And if we don't feel worthy of that power, we don't let it come up in our higher energy centers. So for me, one of the biggest reasons for ejaculation is not trusting ourselves, is having guilt, is having shame in our body, not feeling worthy of our power. So we can learn all the techniques of pushing and holding and tensing this muscle and working with our breath, but if we're not fundamentally doing the self-development work, which is making our desires healthy, coming to terms with who we are, looking at human nature. Human nature is essentially dark. It always has polarity, it always has violence. We can't get away from that, but how do we come into peace with that? How do we trust ourselves with that power to make the right choice, to have that power act from our heart, and then later to come up into our third eye? So the first point in working with non-ejaculation for me is self-development, is actually looking at our desires, is looking at our sexuality. What makes us come? What do I desire? What am I ashamed of? Where is the conflict? How is that kink or whatever it is built on a trauma? How do I heal that trauma? And then maybe I can really enjoy that kink or that sexual. It's not about being pure and not having sex anymore. Working from a tantric perspective is really enjoying the illusion, enjoying our body. If we go to a monastic path of enlightenment, of evolution, it's abstinence, but it's abstinence of everything. You're just trying to not exist in the illusion anymore. When we're learning to work with Tantra, we have to find a way to be with our darkness. We have to find a way to be with those demons, to be with that sexuality, to value it, to understand that's what creates life, that's what turns us on. Nearly all of us are turned on by darkness. Thus we have the guilt and the shame, and then we can't get the energy up. So there's definitely a problem we have to fix in our psychology. So the first point for me is fear makes me ejaculate, or love, it being the same thing. It's like, I love you so much, I don't want to do this, so it leaves the body. Obviously we have the survival instinct, which is to procreate, which again is that animal instinct. So to get out of our lower chakras, which are basically animally based, to come into a civilized way of being, we need to learn to pull this energy up through our body. But as being a man, when we go into polarity, a man's role energetically in separation is to give his energy to a woman. That's what we do. We're supposed to give her our power in order for her to create life. So when we talk about ascending and descending flows, we create all of our energy, we let it go, then we feel relaxed. Most men then go more into a softer feminine state, which isn't a bad thing, it's just a temporary thing, and then we can come back into that state of rebuilding that power. So as much as wanting to give our sexual energy, often we want to give our money, we want to protect. It's something very good that we need to cultivate within ourselves, but we have to move beyond letting the animal take control and just letting all of the protein and the bodily fluids go to separate, so we can bring the energy up. We can still give energy, but without losing energy. So survival, procreation, that can also just lead in wanting to give women money and different things. Now, coming to close to the end, mental fantasies, they make a lot of people ejaculate. You can ejaculate without touching yourself. It can just be what's in your brain. And again, this can go two different ways. So if you fantasize about something that you truly desire and that you truly want, then I'd say come. Let it go, because if you're starting to suppress your true desire, what you actually want, you're having a very negative impact on your body. So I'm practicing non-ejaculation, I'm practicing non-ejaculation, and the most perfect person is there, and they're with you, and they're doing everything right, and you're squeezing, and you're holding, and you're putting your breath in there. You're actually putting this block here, because you're not listening to your heart. You're not being authentic with your desire. So if you can separate your ejaculation from your orgasm, great. But if you can't, you're going to do yourself a massive disservice if you don't let go of your seed in those moments when you're a full, whole heart bodily yes for what's in front of you. Still learn the techniques so that you can separate it, but you need to be able to acknowledge, when is that a true desire? Is that something I really want to say yes to? And if everything in my body wants to release, let it go. For a lot of people, from my understanding, the other thing that makes us want to ejaculate is the desires that we don't want. When something, and this is again, getting the poison out of the body, when something comes into us and we really don't want this to be in us. I don't know, some horrible, disgusting porn thing, and then that fantasy comes in, then the ejaculation happens because you don't want it, so you throw it out of your body. Thus, pornography is desensitizing us because it's about the darkness that's contained within your body. So if the more darkness you can contain, this is a little bit complicated, I hope you're still following me, the more darkness you can contain in a healthy sense, the more powerful you are. So that's a good thing. But when you're looking at darkness that is just nasty and it's unhealthy, it's not divine in any way, it doesn't do any kind of service, it's killing things that don't need to be killed. It's just trying to degrade society when things should be uplifted. This isn't good. There's good darkness and bad darkness. So when it's this kind of negative, unhealthy darkness, then our body doesn't want to contain it, so we throw it out. But then we become more and more desensitized to darkness. So then thus porn becomes very degenerative, and every year it gets more extreme and more filthy, and now I can't come unless there's all of this mental fantasy, which is just because you've desensitized yourself to darkness so much, but it's all unhealthy that you can no longer come. So we have to create a better relationship to darkness, to our shadow, to our sexuality, so that we can contain darkness in our body that we're okay with, that we're not in resistance to. I'm just going to pause for a second because I get it's slightly deep concepts, and if you do my trainings in Tantra, it's a paradox, and we look at this concept in so many different ways. But the relationship between darkness, what's healthy, what's unhealthy, ascending and descending flows of energy is kind of fundamental to the work, and it's fundamental to non-ejaculation. If you guys aren't keeping up with me, please let me know. And again, these are mental concepts because your energetic body is flexible. It doesn't really exist. It does exist, but we live in a kind of a mental sphere. And in that mental sphere, we live in linear time, and our beliefs are relating to how our energetic body is created and formed. So when somebody tells you this is how Kundalini works, and there's these two snakes and they weave in and out of your chakras, you create this mental image of it, and then that image is in your head, and then you make love to somebody, and then you use this concept, and this concept starts to become part of your practice. But if you were told that concept worked differently, then your practice would be different. You would experience it differently. So we really start to understand that the energetic body is very flexible, and it's working in relationship with the mind. The easiest way is your body is a mystery school, and everything's flexible. So the way I teach it is there's a masculine pathway and a feminine pathway in the body, and we see the masculine pathway as our spine. So phallic column of light, energy, divinity runs up and down the spine. The lingam, our cock, is an extension of that spine. So how divinity comes from the unmanifest to manifesting in the world is through our cock. And the energy within our spine is very different to the energy outside in the environment. And this is this is the masculine pathway. The feminine pathway is more related to our chakra systems, to our emotional body. So when we look at our chakra system, we see there's an emotional level, a communication level, of feelings and thoughts. And then as we develop spiritually, there's an astral level. And we're not going to get into that now. Generally, we stay more on the emotional level. But between the chakra systems, there's another polarity of masculine and feminine energy weaving up between the two. So I have this mental concept in my mind of how energy works and moves through my body. And as I run energy through my body, I use this mental concept that I have, and that increases the way the energy flows. So I feel it viscerally, I visualize it, I have the experience, I have the energetic orgasms, the physical orgasms, and every time I run energy through this system, through this mental concept, it becomes more re-established. It also becomes established within the actual muscle memory of my physical body. So how my body moves into yoga or goes into mudra. So there's not a simple answer. Understanding the way that energy flows is so related to your beliefs. It's so related to your mind. So don't put too much weight on, I read this in a book and it said do this. Take everything back to your personal experience of working with your energetic body. Try things out in your sexuality. See how it feels. Acknowledge how that process was in my body, but then give your freedom to change it, because everything's flexible. And the energetic world is working with your physical world, and then they can start to transform each other. So we can physically change and transform how our bodies work. When we think of brain chemistry, I think what's an interesting point in looking at non-ejaculation, for the last maybe 10 years, this 21-day challenge has been really popular because science has measured when a man ejaculates, then his brain creates serotonin and dopamine, and then his body creates more testosterone, and then that creates happy chemicals that peak out, and then because he's so happy, he goes into this peak, but then he's too happy, so then later on his body creates more cortisol as a stress chemical to bring him back down into balance. So this peak orgasm is taking us into happiness, but then it's taking us into sadness because of the cortisol. This is very basic brain function. So people say it's much better to not ejaculate and then to have a steady flow up into being happy. Then this is science has said, we've looked at the body, we've looked at sexuality, this is the truth. And this is the scientific truth of it. But it doesn't factor in your belief. So as soon as you start that 21-day challenge, then every time you ejaculate, you feel guilty. You feel like a failure. Now you've done it wrong. Now you're not going to get your tantric girlfriend. Now you can't manifest what you wanted to out of sex magic. And then because you feel guilty, because of the emotional component, the moment you're making the serotonin and dopamine, you're also making the cortisol. So then you ejaculate, you don't feel happy at all, you feel sad and you feel like a failure. So the science that we have around how our brain chemistry works, as soon as you put the emotional element in there, and the emotions are irrational and they're changing and they're diverse and they affect our body and they affect our brain, you can never measure it with science correctly because it's always changing. It's always in relationship to your beliefs. So then you get to change how your brain chemistry works. And this is how we start to change the vibration of the body by using the power within our ejaculation. So I guess the next thing to look at is definitely personal development over technique. But then when we want to look at technique, we're going to see there's 3 different types of fluid within our sexual reproductive system. So we have the pre-cum, this white clear one, and then if you practice this longer, this just starts to pour out. You get horny, instead of ejaculating, there's just this clear fluid just starts to run out of your body. It's like an antiseptic. It cleans the tube before you come out. Then put very simply in our testicles, that's the sperm, the little tadpoles that try to get into the egg. And then in our prostate, in our anus, that's where the semen is. And the semen is like the food for the sperm. It's the liquid, it's what it eats, it's what all the cells go around. So when we're learning to separate these 3 fluids, we need to de-armor ourselves emotionally, and then working with our trauma back into the self-development level, but also physically. So full body de-armoring, finding pain and trauma in the body, separating how our abdominal muscles work, working with our prostate so we can really feel the difference of our prostate, so that we can orgasm in from our prostate and not into our testicles and pull that fluid into our body. What Taoism is really teaching us is that in the prostate there's a lot of chi. There's a lot of life force and there's a lot of energy, but that chi doesn't necessarily need to be within the physical matter, because it's obviously going to get expelled out of the body anyway. So we learn to pull the chi out of the prostate into the spine, and then as that energy comes up into the spine, we can bring it into our brain. Another way of doing this is breathing through our testicles. If you all want to do it right now, maybe put 2 feet on the floor. If you want to put 2 feet on the floor, stand up, maybe you pump your anus a few times, pump your pelvic floor muscles, and you're just going to imagine that you can pull, maybe up through your feet first, but you're going to take all of that energy out of your prostate, out of your anus, and then you're going to pull it up into your spine, and then you're going to try and run it all the way up through your head. And as you clear your energetic pathways in the body and in the spine, this process becomes very simple, but then the chi is literally coming into your brain. It makes you very creative, makes you a bit more intelligent, stops you sending unsolicited dick pics. Problem is, when you're doing that a lot, then there's a lot of energy. Then when that energy descends down into the body, then that lustful demon is 10 times more powerful, and you're much more likely to act inappropriately and have to fight with your own lustful emotion. So it's good to learn these things gradually and start to understand how you contain that power, because when you have these peak experiences, we definitely need to balance them out in relationship to working with our shadow, into working with duality. So we always need to find the way to balance these energies, not just to ascend everything all of the time. This is great, now I have the answer. The answer is always coming back down into our sex, which is fundamentally polarized, which is in separation, which is light and dark. It's separation. When we bring that energy up into the third eye, it's one eye, it's unity. So that's the polarity between unity and separation. Now at some point we have to come back into separation. The more self-development work we do, the better relationship we have with our inner masculine, our inner feminine, then this polarity is healthy. But when it's not healthy, then we're at war. When we're suppressing our desires, when we're just not fulfilled, when we're not doing what we love in life, when we're having a job that we don't want to go to, when we're pissed off, then that darkness wants to start a fight, wants to break something because it knows it has to create chaos. So you might do all the self-development in the world, but if your environment around you isn't nurturing you, isn't supporting you, isn't giving you enough money or job opportunities or work, then potentially you're still going to go into a very self-destructive state. So this work is important, but we also have to acknowledge that our outside environment is really affecting us as well. And the more we change the inside, we change the outside, obviously. And if we're only changing the inside, then the shadow work's looking at selfishness and different kinds of stuff. So in these 3 forms of separation, there's different ways you can work. You can learn to ejaculate into your kidneys to start with, and it's really too much information in this short space to give. So I'm just going to give you an overview, but a great resource for that is Mantek Chia. Nearly everything in his book around Taoism I really agree with. There's one, I guess the only thing that I'm not really on board with if you read his work is the desensitizing of your lingam, of your cock. In Taoism, they want to last longer. So they do different techniques to take the sensitivity out of your lingam, where my work is learning to put the sensitivity back in so that you can feel more and have more pleasure and have more of an orgasmic state of bliss, because we're trying to be both the masculine and feminine pole at the same time. And for this, it's very good to de-armor our lingam, which basically means using pain using pain in our nervous system in a very relaxed way. And what I teach is de-armoring, and de-armoring resensitizes the skin and the nervous system so that we can feel more. And that feeling more, I know somebody waving at us, and that feeling more is allowing us to generate more pleasure in our body. But in Mantak Chia's work, or in traditional Chinese medicine, they are teaching men to desensitize your lingam, so it doesn't really feel anything, because then you can make love for a long time. In Taoism, there's a calculation, I don't know off the top of my head, but you take how old you are and then you divide it or multiply it, and then it tells you how often you can ejaculate. And for a 17-year-old, it's like once a week. For somebody my age, it's about once every 3 or 4 weeks, which sometimes I go longer, kind of fits in, depends where I am with my desires and my shadow work. I'm just authentically with myself. Sometimes I've gone kind of 6 months, but it doesn't really do very much for me. It just, there's a sense of power at a point, but then actually when my energy gets stuck, the best thing I can do is let my calm go, and then my work is much more powerful and more profound, because it's all about suppression, desire, authenticity, listening to what wants to happen in life, more than this idea that there's this special energy in my balls, and if I never let it go, then I'll be able to conquer the world. It's not about that at all. It's all about your inner experience and your relationship to reality, to the vibrational reality that is created from the information within our bodies. So when we have resistance and shame in our body, that's what we get back. So always just learning to be very fluid, to separate the orgasm and the ejaculation, and then to prolong it for as long as you can. But even in an orgasm, there's still energy's being expelled. It's kind of a sublimation and a transmutation. If you take that energy up the spine, into the brain, into the pineal gland, that energy, physical energy, turns into spiritual energy. So that's great, but it's still a loss. Now you have more spiritual energy. It's also good to learn how to bring spiritual energy back into the body and turn it back into matter. This is how we make our body divine. This is why Kundalini bodywork's more tantric and not monastic. So even if you learn to separate your orgasm from your ejaculation, you're still expelling energy when you orgasm. So it's really about the mindfulness that you're expelling it with and the frequency of it. And then it's so much. If you've got great nutrition and you exercise a lot and you sleep enough, then you can orgasm every day. If you're having a really hard week and there's a lot of stress going on, then you need to reduce that until you get to a point where your body's in a healthy place, that you're still really looking after the nutrition and the physical plane. So 3 different forms of ejaculate, learning to separate them, then learning to bring the energy up. We learn to bring the energy up by doing our personal development, not having any shame, not having any resistance. Then we can come into the heart. Once we can separate so that the pre-com is coming out and we're able to pull the chi from the prostate into the spine. Like blue balls is not a good thing. I used to get blue balls a lot when I started to practice this. Like if your balls are hurting, let go. But then after a while, it doesn't happen anymore. I don't get them at all. So that's the times when you should come. You had all that desire, your body's getting ready to go through this process. So then your balls get really heavy because they've produced more, but then you haven't let go. And then it hurts, and then it's painful, and then your body's got to pull it all back in. But your body's very clever, and it learns from you. It adapts to what you do. If you lose an organ, you cut something out, your body adapts, it changes. It's incredibly intelligent. So the more you practice and the more you do something, then your body's going to change. That sense of blue balls is going to go away. The pre-ejaculate will be able to come out of your lingam, and you'll be able to pull most of the chi out of the prostate, out of the semen into the spine. De-armoring, we talked about. Energetic, full body orgasms are great. It's just good to experience. Don't let anybody tell you what it's going to be like. Have your experience. Definitely learning to orgasm in every chakra is a great thing to do, and you'll do that by your awareness, by your focus, by understanding what this chakra is, understanding its relationship, eventually opening that spiritual dimension. But to start with, working on this emotional level. And if this is a solo practice or in a partnership, then again, but this would be a whole week's training in Tantra on energetic lovemaking, working with energetic sex. Am I giving too much? I know sometimes I talk very quickly. Shall I slow down? Yeah, so why? Just for spiritual development, to be a man and not an animal? That's basically the answer. And how? I'll just say it again, personal development. Look at your emotions, see where you're angry. That's the work. We can go like all of these different techniques, but really the work, when you have that emotional level, it's going to be different. The emotional self-development place is where to start. So you can edge for a while. You can just bring yourself to that point of arousal, and then go into meditation. Don't just stop and do anything. Start to focus on your meditation practice. So you're building your energetic body with your mind. You're deciding how energy runs through. I've told you there's a block between here, and if you don't have any shame and resistance, then you can bring that energy up through your body. So if you get aroused and then you come to that point of where you want to ejaculate, then you stop and then you meditate, and then you have to start to bring that energy up through your spine, or you can bring it up through the feminine pathway, through the chakras. So these are the meditation practices we teach in Kundalini bodywork, noticing that the Sushumna, the masculine pathway, is different to the feminine pathway that has masculine and feminine energy in. So maybe you want to draw a picture of this. Maybe you want to look at a picture of somebody else's body, and when you take that sexual energy, which is partly mental, you turn that into the feeling of meditating it up through your spine. Working with your pelvic floor. So we learn to de-armor first the abdomen, to separate the muscles from the pelvic floor to the abdomen. If you want to study things like that with me or with somebody else, it's a really great thing. But then you have to learn how to de-armor first. But very basically, if you just do Kegel exercises, kind of doing Kegel exercises, but then trying to keep a soft belly. So your belly's a bit fat and flabby, you're not tensing your core, it's not hard, it's soft, you're relaxed, you can breathe into your belly, long deep breaths into your belly, and then imagine you're going to the toilet, peeing, stop peeing, peeing, stop peeing. Start to get more aware, conscious control over your pelvic floor muscles. So you can separate the muscles that you pee with to the muscles that you shit with, to eventually being able to move your perineum up in between the middle, because your perineum is where a lot of that earth Gaia energy is coming through. So the more conscious control you can have over the muscles in your pelvic floor, and there's a lot of them, the more ways you can move your pelvic floor, the more pleasure you can get from just pumping your pelvis. If you do a Ujjayi breath, if you want to do this one with me now, you breathe in through your nose, but you contract your throat slightly. And then you breathe into your stomach first, and then your chest, and then you breathe out halfway. Then half out the second way, and then do this again. And now as you're doing this Ujjayi breath, where there's sound, where there's vibration in the throat, you're going to start to pump your pelvic floor. Like you're peeing and you're stop peeing, and you're connecting the vibration in the throat to the sensation in the pelvic floor, and you're feeling pleasurable thoughts, and you're starting to follow this energy that's moving through your body. Now you're having more conscious control of your pelvic floor, of your sexual organs, in connection to your throat, in connection to your throat chakra. It's your energetic body, you just got to make it up, really. But if you work with this 3-part Ujjayi breath, pumping the pelvic floor and doing Kegel exercises, that's a real basic way into de-arming, kind of to cheat. Or you could go study it a bit more. But getting conscious control over your pelvic floor, and then working with your breath, and working with your meditation, and working with your visualization to keep bringing that energy up through your body, to keep letting the energy constantly ascend and getting it into your brain. But then don't forget to also let the energy descend back down. Otherwise, eventually, you're going to get overly horny, and you're not really going to be able to cope with it, and then that demon shows up. Breathing through your testicles, same thing. Just imagine that you're breathing from your testicles into your spine, up into your head. If you don't have a meditation practice, you're going to find this very difficult. First, you need to go do a Vipassana retreat or study meditation with somebody. First, you need to have a meditation practice, the ability to visualize energy moving through your body. You don't have to do it for very long, but do it for a week or so, and then add bringing your sexual energy into it after that, and then it will become much more profound. I would never meditate now without feeling turned on, without feeling some connection to earth energy, Gaia energy, because it's not just sex, it's a word we use, but it's just dense life force. Perfect. So I would focus on those things, on those visualizations, on bringing yourself to this point of edging. Obviously, if you want to start pressing, holding, pushing into your perineum, putting elastic bands on it, tying weights onto your testicles, and then pumping and lifting weights, and there's all kinds of things that you can do. And all of these we need to go into like a much deeper education to do it safely and to look at the nuances of it all. But in an hour, I just really want to run home the importance of that self-development, the importance of that block, looking at the reasons that we calm and our lust, and then turning our sex into our meditation and seeing that the point of non-ejaculation is to take separation into unity, whether that's unity with yourself or somebody else. And once you have those overarching points, I want to be a man, not an animal. I want to take these polarized energies into unity. This is the power of creation. I want to create something. So if we talk about sex magic and manifestation, we have our desire. The moment that we bring that energy and we take those two polarizing forces and we orgasm in our third eye, then we connect with our higher self, our vortex, our matrix. Then we can really put the desires that we want out into the world. At the same time, if you're feeling that maybe you just want to do some kind of ceremony and sacrifice your seed, write down on a piece of paper what you want and do it in a descending pathway of, no, actually I'm just letting this go because I really want this. Like both ways are fine. It's not bad to let it go. You can orgasm in a ceremonial way, and to adapt this as a lifestyle and a practice, really making your sexuality spiritual, in my mind, is the only way that it's going to be sustainable. So eventually everything has to turn into... It doesn't mean that you can't have fun, it doesn't mean that you can't go to play parties and be kinky and do all of these things, but you need to start to have constant mindfulness, constant awareness of what you're doing, the energies that you're letting into your body. There's like more I could say, but I think you guys had specific questions around... I can't remember what they were, but please feel free to ask in the last...
What? Close to what we're talking
a little bit
about.
personal, but the easiest thing I found to get around it is to have an incredibly hot Russian lover. Because then it just doesn't. It just always, like, it can happen every time.
To me, it becomes torturous if you're fighting.
So I would notice when you...
ejaculation
may I interrupt? Just to go
Sure.
back to your original question. When you're with a partner and that process is happening, I imagine if she is really aware of her energetic body in relation to your energetic body, and she's able to work with your energetic system in a tantric kundalini understanding of the way that it's working, then you're going to stay hard because you're in connection with her and you're no longer just making love on a physical level. But if you're just on your own and then there's nobody there, it takes more self-mastery. I would personally just use more pain to stay hard. This is a little bit deeper into de-armoring and the way that we use pain. That's just my personal experience. But if you're with a partner and she's just not very conscious or on that energetic level, then that's your body's defense mechanism. Again, in relation to your beliefs, so it is probably going to be very hard to get your erection back up. But I would be very sure if you educated her and you had the same understanding of the energetic level, then you would probably stay hard. Yeah, definitely. There's one common sense point you might also look at. The relationship between our sympathetic and our parasympathetic nervous system is often directing where the blood flow goes. So because your brain has said, oh, now I've ejaculated, but I haven't, and then the way your nervous system is programmed is then to move the blood from your lingam somewhere else within your body. So as we start to take more conscious control over our unconscious nervous system, which is something we should do very slowly, otherwise we'd have to be consciously breathing all of the time. We want to breathe unconsciously, that our nervous system is telling us to move that blood to somewhere else because we don't need it here anymore. So once we have that understanding, we want to work with our nervous system in a slightly different way to keep the blood within our lingam, which is just mind over matter. And then you also need to think that if your arteries are really clogged because you've got too much fat in them and the blood's not pumping around, we do something called the life pulse massage, that you actually just need to really start to free the arteries in your body. You need to start eating in relation to bone marrow health to make sure that your white and red blood cell counts are more balanced, because then that means that the blood will be easily flowing everywhere it needs to the body. If you haven't worked out, if you haven't done a lot of exercise recently, if you're not breathing deeply enough, then the blood's not pumping around your body properly, so it's becoming a little bit more stagnated. So obviously then it's going to move out of your lingam very quickly and it's going to go somewhere else. Whereas if you've got very good circulation and you've got good nutrition and your arteries aren't clogged in any way, so that everything's flowing through your body in the way that it should, then you wouldn't, probably less likely to have that problem. And breath work is probably just like some holotropic deep breathing to really make sure that you're doing just that at the very least every day, so that your respiratory system is working to its maximum. You need the other factor, like where was you when you were ejaculating? Was you in your grandma's wardrobe? Maybe it wouldn't be so pleasurable. Was you with somebody, or was you thinking about something, or was you heartbroken at the time? I think so much of that is just that emotional point. Do I love myself? Am I happy? What would make me happy? How could I use my sex to get me happy? We're always moving from this state of I'm in polarity, my life is stuck right now, nothing's moving. Okay, well I can always use my sexuality to create a change, to create a shift in reality consciously. So maybe instead of looking at, I think it's psychological, and you have to work with the psychology and then programming your mind, telling your mind. Our subconscious really just does what we tell it. And the more we tell it what an orgasm does and what an ejaculation is and where we want our body to move, the more we tell our subconscious mind this, the more it will do it. And the more we practice, the more we put that information into our physical body, into our muscle memory, and then the more we use it in our meditation. We have to work on 3 different levels at the same time for the same purpose, and then we really create a change. If we don't work with those 3 different levels at the same time for the same purpose, then we don't really shift where we are in relation to polarity. We stay stuck. But in relation to not having an erection, de-armoring is a really good thing, and so is working with pain, and so is just learning to not care, to make love with a soft cock. The more you are in resistance to not having an erection, the more you're not going to have an erection, because that's what you're thinking about, and that's what you're focusing on not having it, so then you're not having it. As soon as you're just happy with what is, it's much more likely to come back. So if you are struggling with having an erection, I would just look at overall health, enjoying having a soft cock, and then naturally it will become hard because you're not focusing on it being soft. De-armoring is a metaphor that we have emotional armor in our body. Obviously we have physical armor, which is muscle memory. It protects us. So the armor in our physical body, that when somebody hits me, I know to fall, that I have these reactions and these reflexes. These are really good things. I don't want to lose my physical armor in my body. But we put, and it's muscle memory. So the memory is in our muscle. But the emotional memory is also in our muscles. So we keep so many of our stories and our traumas inside of our body. So there's different ways to de-armor, and the way that I work with de-armoring is generally a much more softer. It's an emotional de-armoring. It's finding anger, jealousy, heartbreak, shame, lack. Most things come back to your parents. So we mix talking therapy with a physical therapy. So we talk and then we go, okay, but this is also in the body. And then we come to where it is in the body, and then we physically feel pain. By working with our breath in a certain way, we learn to lower our pain threshold so that things hurt, but we don't get bruised. We don't do ourselves any damage. Because nothing's going to hurt you if you tense. If you tense, you're strong. But the moment we learn to relax and we learn to breathe in a certain way, our pain threshold becomes much, much lower. our mental mind is focusing on stories that we might have, but often the emotion that we find in our body is something completely different. Memories come up, people just start crying, rage comes out because these emotions are in your body. So again, we're working in these three different aspects at once. And then as we pull the emotion out of the body, we get it into the field, we start to transform that energy, and then the physical body changes, it realigns. So if you have a lot of fear in your liver, or anger, and then you've processed it mentally in your mind, you've forgiven all the people, you've done all the self-development work, you're doing it really well, but you never actually got that emotion out of your liver, out on that physical level. It's kind of still there. So this is because it's vibrational and it's in the cells. It vibrates slightly different, and then it can mutate, it becomes dense. Emotional energy is dense. Anger, fear, jealousy, regret, shame, these are all very dense emotional, they're just heavier, they're heavier emotions. Love, joy, happiness, inspiration, these are much lighter emotions. So again, we're talking about ascending and descending energy and how we create physical matter, but we want to create, experience of life, physical matter that vibrates highly. There's of a high vibration. So it's very good to get these lower, denser emotions out of the body, otherwise they can mutate and turn into problems. So de-armoring is learning to soften, to have no resistance to pain and no attachment to pleasure. When we have no resistance to pain and no attachment to pleasure, we're basically working with universal law, because non-resistance and non-attachment means we are who we are. We can have what we want, we can evolve. Our vibration becomes higher. The moment we resist something, our vibration's lower. The moment we want or attached to something, then we're attached. We can't go any higher. So we teach the body universal law through de-armoring, and it's mostly working on an emotional level. But then when we're also talking about our lingam and our prostate and around our core muscles, as we're taking those emotions out, that means we are starting to have more conscious control of our pelvic floor, of our sexual muscles, that we can squeeze and pull and we can do these things for much longer, but we also have the emotional relationship to it. So we start to see that in our mind, in our sympathetic nervous system, this is much more in the brain, and our parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest functions that are in our stomach. But our intuition is in our stomach. If every chakra is of an emotional vibration, of an emotional frequency, when you walk into a room and you feel what somebody else feels, we've all had, you walk into a building, you go, this building doesn't feel good, there's nothing in your head. Or you sit next to somebody and say, you're really sad, I can feel that you're sad, or I can feel that you're angry. That information doesn't come into the brain first, it comes through your chakras into your emotional body, it comes into your organs and your glands, and then your organs and your glands communicate with your brain. So we move from having just a mental understanding of the world to an empathic and telepathic understanding of other people around us. So by working with our organs and our glands, and we de-armor them, then we learn to move conscious awareness out of our mind. And as we move conscious awareness out of our mind, we put it into different organs, into different glands. We start to develop our intuition, so we can relate to the matrix, we can relate to reality very differently. And then as we're having that experience, we have more places to put our sexual energy into. We have more avenues to turn this sexual energy into spiritual growth, and nobody can tell you what's going to happen, because it's your mystery school. The fun is in the experience, it's in the learning. Somebody shouldn't tell you what's going to happen, but can definitely teach you how to do these very basic practices on de-armoring. So lowering the pain threshold, bringing the emotion out of the body to experience the emotion and transform it. But then after we de-armor, especially around the core, we have to re-armor. Otherwise we start to lose all of our core strength, we go too soft. So it's always this balance between giving our empathic nature space so that we can feel empathy, but not feel so much empathy that we can't do anything and we're just crying all the time because there's so much pain in the world. We have to find that balance. Yeah, exactly. But then we learn to do that with our breath. It's just pushing on something isn't really gonna do enough. You don't need to learn too much, but definitely learn a little bit more before you just go and push inside a woman's yoni, because you might actually end up traumatizing her more, or not really taking the pain away. Or then it's, I think with any therapy, when you go to see a therapist, when you have people who have had real sexual abuse, debilitating trauma, their parents have raped them, and they can't forgive them, every time they try a new therapy and it doesn't work, it just makes it harder and harder for the next time. So if you do have a very severely sexually abused woman, maybe don't just go in and try to help her with these techniques, because it actually makes it so much harder for then somebody else to come later on. I think it's just that thing of having real proper training and education before you start practicing on other people. I have an online course. I'm not trying to promote myself. I'm sure Emily will give you some links. But the process of the course is you learn to de-armor your own body first, so you know how these things feel, how you lower your pain threshold, and then you learn to de-armor other people in the advanced training. So it's all about your self-practice, working with yourself, and then understanding that we don't really heal other people. We just become the right vibration. We become our best selves, and then being in that space and that presence with somebody else is what helps them heal and transform. So when you go to de-armor another woman's yoni, you pressing is definitely a big part of the process, but equally or even bigger is your vibration, is your thoughts, is your mindfulness, is the way that you're touching her. So it's not just like a mechanical press, it's all about the inner awareness. So I'm not saying don't do it, just having that mindfulness is really important. And when people learn to de-armor themselves, often they find they don't really get it. We're slowly improving the course. It has a big community around it, so then you can find people to exchange with online. There's like session exchanges, so you can do it on Zoom, so somebody else witnesses you. Because when someone witnesses you in the process of de-armoring, they're giving you their energy, they're giving you their presence. So then something different happens because there's more energy. Everything's information, energy, same. So there's more information for you to de-armor with. It triggers different parts of your body. And then when they come to the advanced trainings, and then they physically, other people de-armor them, when they go back to that self-de-armoring practice, then a lot transforms. And in that process, the way we teach it, there's a lot of emotional release first, physical de-armoring, but then after several sessions that you shouldn't need to do that anymore. You need to do that when somebody dies, when there's a big tragedy, but then your practice should be tantric, it should be pleasurable, it should be creating the life you deserve, you should be coming out of that pain and trauma all the time, and then just consciously deciding when you need to lower your vibration for balance, consciously deciding when you need more darkness, when you need to do some shadow work because you're becoming too unbalanced, when you need to re-armor your core. Now I'm kind of repeating myself from earlier. If there's still 10 minutes left, if you have more questions, they're really welcome. The website's kundalinibodywork.com, and there's an online course, then there's in-person trainings like level 1, level 2. Then we do have a tantra training next year, but the way we teach the tantra training, the Kundalini bodywork is done as a therapy practice. So you're really working with sexual energy, but you're holding space. So as a man, I'm in the masculine pathway, I'm working with my sexual energy within myself. We also touch into non-dual healing, accessing non-dual consciousness to help somebody else access it. So it's just really a process of it's a very fine line between healing somebody and just being yourself. So we learn to work with sexual energy completely with our own space, in order to support somebody else to awaken, to activate themselves. When we teach the Tantra trainings, they're couple trainings, so you can bring a friend, you can bring a man, you can bring a woman, it doesn't need to be a romantic sexual partner, but you work with the same partner for the entire training in all the intimate exercises. For other things, we change around. You have to study you have to apply and then study some of the online course. Thank you, really well. It doesn't really make a difference, because what we're learning through Kundalini, The rising aspect is understanding that we have masculine and feminine energy within us. And the process of is becoming balanced, is becoming both masculine and both feminine, is becoming completely sovereign. So your gender is just, it's irrelevant. When we come down into polarity, into separation for co-creation, some of us have a yoni and some of us have a lingam. And then within this, there's definitely a natural way that things fit together. Working with the energetic body, for doing the de-armoring techniques, all of this is exactly the same. The only thing I wouldn't know how to do is to sit in yab yum between an anus and a lingam. But other tantra teachers, it's all perception. But if that is your truth and you feel happy, then I think it's a great thing. A little bit political on the whole kind of the way the transgender movement and everything is moving in the wrong direction, because we turn it into such a physical appearance, whereas my belief is when we have this harmony within our masculine and feminine dynamics, this idea of needing to change our physical sex and our appearance will be much less. But definitely some people just love the same gender more, and that's beautiful, and you should be free to be you and to have that spiritual relationship. So in everything that I teach, no problem at all. We've had several gay couples attend our trainings. Generally more men attend than gay women, but I guess women are just more bisexual. The book focuses on masculine and feminine energy, but it's just talking about emotion. So it puts things into different boxes, and it's saying is that what's important is polarity. Polarity is important. We can't exist without polarity. So instead of saying something's good and something's bad, we say something's masculine, something's feminine. And when we look at emotions and emotional dynamics, whenever we want to move from one emotion to another, we using these masculine and feminine terms helps us create a culture around it. But ultimately, if you decide that self-assurance is masculine or self-assurance is feminine, it's totally up to you. It's your energy, it's your life. What's important is that there's the polarity. And when you're in relation to somebody else, you can work with their emotional understanding to create happiness. And we're just learning to work with emotion. So when we talk about those energies, it's just emotion. At least for me, there's moments in my life where I just get so uncontrollably horny. It's crazy. My whole Kundalini awakening was going vegan, stopping drinking, doing a lot of yoga, purifying my body. And then the more I purified it, the more horny I would get, the more perverted I would feel, the more violent and angry. And I was like, this is my body clearing out. And it wasn't until I realized that I understood that I needed to deal with this energy. But living in polarity and then doing this work and coming to a point of, I don't know what word to use, self-mastery, of kind of raising my consciousness and bringing it back down so that my body just feels different, that I'm happier and more content with my life. That contentment at some point, it doesn't really last forever for me. So I need to keep dropping back into my shadow and finding these healthy ways to live. So when we teach shadow work, we see that there's 4 levels. One of those levels is kind of initiation of your heart, when you are met with these demonic energies that make you want to do negative things because they want the existence to continue. They want the illusion to keep turning. We're going quite far into my own personal psyche right now. I hope it's making sense. Then how am I in relationship to these demonic energies? Because they are part of me. I can't separate myself from them. So when I have these incredibly lustful urges and I'm unable to bring all of that energy up into my body, I really have to start to look at my psychology. And for me, that's been a very enlightening process. But then after I finished it all, I'm left with, well, now what? Now, what do I do now? So now my process, and I'm still learning, and this is the fun thing, is doing my shadow work, is consciously going into these darker aspects in order to generate more power from them in a healthy way. Otherwise, I feel like life runs out, and then the people who you don't really want to have most of the power in the world have it because they're constantly working with their darkness and their pain. So I don't know if I answered your question, or yeah, it's a bit personal, so it came out slightly. Thank you. The book focuses on there's a mature masculine and immature masculine and feminine, but it shows that the mature masculine can be healthy or unhealthy, and the immature can be healthy or unhealthy, and it kind of between these four quadrants. The thing that's missing in society the most is the mature masculine, from my understanding, because these values are much more around interdependence, around cooperation, around humbleness, taking responsibility, holding boundaries, having balance. They're, um, they're things that aren't, they don't make so much money, and they often prevent more money being made. And for the most part, we see that the feminine within us needs to come first. It's this love and acceptance needs to happen before the immature masculine can become mature. So when we're looking at this dynamic, those mature masculine traits, at least that emotional way of being and showing up in the world on a collective level, is really missing when we just look at how much cooperation, how much humbleness there are, how much respected boundaries. All of these things are really lacking in governments, in politics, in business, and everything else is pretty much there. Competition, domination. Anyway, we're kind of going over time, and the book is a very different topic, but thank you.
Vulnerability of men helps men heal. And so my whole reason for putting this group together and wanting to bring you guys together to have a conversation about a topic like this is that I just see all of the men in my life struggling with what's going on in the world. And I have a deep desire to want to help you guys. But sometimes when you don't have the right part, you can't really speak the language. So I just thought maybe Elliot would be a great resource. And I think he is. So if anybody feels inspired to learn more, I think this is truly a person who's done a lot of self-healing, a lot of shadow work, and can meet you guys wherever you are, even if it's at the beginning, and help with that. So I just want to say thank you for being here today and helping us American men over here.
Thank you. It was really great to meet you all.
I am excited to be introducing Elliot to you today. Elliot is, I think, probably a world leader on this particular subject, just because I think there's so few men who have devoted years and years and years of time to cultivating this art form. And when I asked him if he would come speak to all of you, he graciously said yes. So we're very lucky to have him with us here today. Elliot and I, we almost dated once, and then I slapped him, and then we did a date. So that can just clear the question in everybody's mind.
Just to say, I really liked the slap. I thought it was one of the best parts of hanging out with you.
Elliot is the author of this particular book, which is a great book on looking at the shadow aspects that we need to address in order to harness our sexual powers. And I actually love this book because it taught me a lot about how of an underdeveloped masculinity I personally was carrying around in me. So this is an older copy. I think there's a new reprint, but masculine and feminine polarity work. What's the new title, Elliot?
Yeah, it's the same book, but a publisher bought it and republished it as The Inner Marriage.
The Inner Marriage. So definitely would recommend that. And then Elliot has been practicing this since he was 28 years old. And since 2017, he has been full-time teaching Tantra and running his school of Kundalini bodywork, which is a healing modality. I have seen him wave his hands in the air and give women orgasms. So it's quite impressive, the amount of ability that he has. And other than that, he's just a beautiful human like all of you. I feel something that's really cool about this group of people is that all of you are leading edge thinkers in terms of your consciousness level, and very rare to have such a cool group of people together who care about the earth and are good humans. And part of why I wanted to bring you all together is because of the collective spirit of humanity that you all share. So Elliot shares that with you. You're very lucky. You're learning, as am I. And yes, that's my introduction. Elliot, anything else you'd like to touch on?
That was a great introduction. Thank you very much.